The moment the tray hit her table, Valerie Monroe knew. This wasn't a mistake. This was a message. Cold sandwich, wilted lettuce, a half cup of lukewarm water, no silverware, no cloth napkin, no apology. And above it all, the smile. That tight-lipped, professional smile, worn like armor. The kind of smile that says, "We didn't forget you. We just didn't think you mattered." The attendant didn't call her by name, didn't even make eye contact. "I'm sorry, there must have been a system glitch. This is what we have left." And just like that, she turned, heels clicking away on the plush first-class carpet. No further explanation, no effort to fix it, no hesitation. Valerie stared at the tray, then glanced at the men seated across from her. 3 white men, 3 tailored suits, 3 perfectly plated meals. One of them was already swirling red wine in a crystal glass, laughing at a joke about tech stocks. The other was cutting into lamb, steam still rising. The third had caviar, sparkling water, and a name, Mr. Radcliffe. She had a sandwich, and silence. She didn't speak. Not yet. Instead, she leaned back slowly in seat 1A, let her shoulder blades press into the leather, and reached for her smartwatch. 2 taps. Soft, discreet, precise. A green light blinked, and 5,000 miles away, something began to move. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the system. "Tell us where you're watching from, and have you ever been dismissed like this?" No one else noticed. Of course they didn't. That was the entire point. Discrimination had evolved. It didn't wear boots anymore. It wore blazers. It didn't shout slurs. It smiled, shrugged, and offered you a cold sandwich instead of the steak you'd confirmed a week in advance. Valerie Monroe had seen it before, in boardrooms, in investment pitches, on stages where men called her exceptional like it was a compliment, not a limit. But this was seat 1A, and she had earned every inch of it. 30 minutes earlier, she'd walked through Zurich International's VIP terminal alone. No assistants, no luggage handler, just a leather portfolio tucked under her arm, and the presence of someone who didn't need introductions. The gate agent had looked confused when she handed over her boarding pass. "Are you flying with?" he had begun to ask. She waited. Let him finish. "With this class?" He tried to make it sound like a clerical question. It wasn't. She nodded once, wordless. He scanned the code, stiffened, and waved her through. Now, on board, the exact same choreography was repeating itself, this time with white gloves and cabin service. The flight attendant's name tag read Samantha. Her hair was in a tight, regulation-perfect bun. Her movements were crisp, but her attention was selective. 3 men had received personal greetings. "Welcome back, Mr. Radcliffe. Would you like your wine chilled again, Mr. Malcolm? Mr. Delgado, we've got your usual seat preference ready." She hadn't even looked at Valerie long enough to pronounce her name. The tray in front of her hadn't just missed the order. It had erased her. Valerie didn't touch the food. She didn't drink the water. She let the silence sit, because underneath her stillness, wheels were turning. She wasn't just a passenger. She was the CEO of Summit Equity Holdings, an $18 billion investment powerhouse that quietly underwrote ground logistics, fuel financing, and airport infrastructure for over a dozen airline groups worldwide, including Stratos. She didn't need to complain. She just needed to connect the dots. And the smartwatch blinking quietly on her wrist? That was her signal, her system, Skyline Protocol. The protocol was originally designed for incident escalation, weather delays, ground asset mismanagement. But under Valerie's leadership, it had gained new parameters: behavioral bias, service inconsistency, VIP treatment mapping. And the moment she tapped in, Summit servers began parsing live cabin footage, crew logs, and passenger interaction metadata. 3 rows over, Samantha was laughing. This time at a joke Mr. Radcliffe had made about how far diversity had gone. Valerie blinked slowly, The system would catch it all. The interaction timing, the tone, the body language. It would pull meal assignment records, check service times, cross-reference previous flights. In less than 10 minutes, it would generate a heat map showing exactly how unequally she had been treated. And then, all Valerie had to do was forward it to Stratos' CEO, to Summit's investment board, and to the International Service Ethics Consortium. She didn't need a scene. She needed a signal, and she had just sent it. The sandwich tray stayed untouched for the entire flight. Samantha never returned, not to apologize, not even to ask if she needed anything. But that was fine, because Valerie Monroe wasn't hungry for food. She was hungry for correction, and correction was coming. Valerie Monroe had learned early. Some rooms weren't built for women like her, and if you did find your way in, they made sure you always felt like a guest, a tolerated presence. Not quite one of them. She first understood this at 25, standing in a marble-lined elevator at the IMF headquarters in Washington, D.C. She had just been promoted to lead auditor on a mid-tier aviation portfolio review. An impressive leap for anyone, but especially for a black woman who'd started her career as an unpaid intern working overnight compliance checks. That morning, as she entered the elevator, a white executive nodded at her politely and asked, "Which office are you cleaning?" She remembered blinking once, and then, calmly, pressing the button for the executive floor. Now, nearly 3 decades later, she sat in seat 1A of Stratus Flight 1177, letting the memory pass through her like water, not out of bitterness, but to measure. That moment had been pivotal, not because it hurt, but because it taught her something. No matter how high you climbed, some people still refused to look up. The tray in front of her still hadn't moved. The cold sandwich sat untouched, like a symbol, a quiet monument to selective service. Around her, the cabin moved as if nothing were wrong. Samantha, the senior attendant, was pouring sparkling water for Mr. Delgado now. Her voice had softened into something almost intimate. "We do have a light chocolate mousse left if you're still hungry, sir," she said, leaning just slightly closer than necessary. Delgado chuckled. "You're reading my mind." Valerie didn't look away. She didn't frown. She simply tapped her armrest again, activating the skyline overlay on her smartwatch. The screen showed live analytics. Passenger names, seat numbers, service timestamps, interaction heat map, shades of green for attention, gray for indifference, red for avoidance. Her seat, 1A, was deep red. The others? Bright green. Of course, that wasn't anger bubbling in her chest. It was confirmation. She thought back to Geneva, 5 years ago, at a private equity summit. She'd just concluded a panel on sovereign investment models, and a young intern had walked up to her afterward. "You're really sharp," he'd said. "Have you ever thought about moving into leadership?" Valerie had smiled. She'd been the founding CEO of Summit Equity Holdings for 7 years at that point. Even earlier, at Yale, freshman year, she'd walked into her first finance seminar, and the professor had looked over her transcript, then said in front of the class, "Double majoring in econ and applied math. That's ambitious." Not impossible, not impressive, just ambitious. She was used to it, used to being told, indirectly, that she didn't belong. What Samantha didn't know, what Stratus didn't bother to check, was that Valerie Monroe wasn't a typical passenger. She wasn't a celebrity, wasn't loud, wasn't someone who posted things online for clout. She was worse. She was quiet power, the kind that moves billions behind closed doors. Back in the cabin, another attendant, Marcus, younger, more reserved, appeared near the galley. He paused, glanced toward Valerie's tray, and then back at Samantha. "Did Ms. Monroe's entree get logged wrong?" he asked in a low voice. Samantha didn't turn around. "She'll be fine," she replied briskly. "It happens. Priority seating got shifted when we boarded late." Marcus hesitated. "She's diamond tier, isn't she?" Samantha waved a hand. "Just drop it. We're not changing trays mid-flight." Valerie watched their exchange through the reflection in her window. She caught the look on Marcus's face, uncertain, maybe uncomfortable, but he didn't press it. He walked away. And that was the real root of all this. It wasn't just the action, it was the silence around it. No one wanted to challenge the system. No one wanted to be the one who said, "This isn't right." The skyline overlay blinked again. Data stream updated. Samantha had now spoken directly to 5 other passengers, each time calling them by name. Her average engagement time with white male passengers, 42 seconds. With Valerie, 6 seconds. No name, no personal question, no offer to resolve, just a sandwich. Valerie turned off the screen. Her assistant, Amina, would be watching the feed from Summit HQ by now. She didn't need to message her. The trigger was enough. Everything was being documented. Speech pattern analysis, tray timestamps, even micro-facial expressions from cabin staff. She wasn't just filing a complaint. She was building a legal-grade case study. And in about 6 minutes, the first internal flags would hit Stratos' regulatory compliance inbox. She thought of her father, an electrical engineer who had never flown first class, but always read the airline magazines cover to cover. He used to say, "If the system doesn't invite you to the table, build your own table, then rent out the chairs." Valerie had done just that. And now, she controlled the capital that kept the lights on for companies like Stratos. But it was never about revenge. It was about reminding them, just because you don't see power doesn't mean it's not watching. Samantha passed again, this time with dessert options. "Would you like anything else, Mr. Radcliffe?" "Still comfortable, Mr. Malcolm." "Refill, Mr. Delgado." She didn't glance at Valerie. Not once. Valerie tilted her head slightly. Now she was curious. Not about the food. About how deep this pattern ran. Was this a personal bias or a trained behavior? Was Samantha making choices or just reflecting a culture? Summit's eye assistant, Lynx, pinged her watch. Live bias index, 84.6%. Pattern repeated across 3 prior flights. Crew ID. Samantha Klein, 7 soft complaints flagged in past 18 months. No corrective action on file. Valerie exhaled slowly. No anger, no satisfaction, just clarity. The problem wasn't Samantha. The problem was the system that protected Samantha. She turned to her window again. Outside, the sky was pitch black, stretched over the Atlantic like a curtain. The cabin was warm, quiet, softly lit with gold. It all looked so perfect. But under the surface, data was compiling. And truth, when structured properly, was a much sharper blade than outrage. She wasn't going to raise her voice. She was going to make sure the next Samantha didn't survive unnoticed. And when the plane landed in Boston, Stratus Airlines would find out what happens when the system you ignored decides to notice you back. In a sleek corner office on the 47th floor of Manhattan's West Union Tower, Amina Hallstrom's phone lit up with a quiet blue pulse. She didn't flinch. She didn't need to. That signal, a discrete 3-second loop from Valerie's smartwatch, meant one thing: Skyline Protocol, Level 3 activation. Amina leaned forward, tapped her keyboard once, and brought up the live feed. On her screen, Valerie sat calm and composed in seat 1A, a cold sandwich in front of her. No confrontation, no argument, no raised voice, just silence and data. Beside the feed, real-time overlays flickered. Service engagement score, 14% bias index, 84.6% crew behavior. Pattern, recurring trigger flag. Priority passenger neglect. Beneath it, Summit Equity's AI system, Lynx, was already building the case file. Amina didn't wait. She turned to the encrypted conference interface and tapped a name. Noah Drenner, Chief Risk Officer, Summit Equity. She's triggered Skyline, Flight 1177, Boston bound, Samantha Klein's crew, Amina said calmly. Noah's eyes narrowed. She sent it manually. She tapped, just once. Lynx picked up 6 policy deviations. Pattern matches 3 prior events on file. Noah whistled low. Stratos is about to have a very bad day. 15 seconds later, in a glass-walled war room at Summit HQ, red and gold lights glowed across a live control board labeled Airline Integrity Monitoring. Under Stratos Airlines, new flags blinked. Live, service discrepancy. Detected alert, VIP disrespect, action required, ethical compliance review, pending Summit equity, didn't need to send emails. The system escalated automatically. And when the Skyline protocol reaches threshold level 3, three things happen in tandem. The airline's real-time funding trigger enters red band scrutiny. Legal partners are pinged with preliminary bias evidence. Corporate board members tied to Summit's airline funding portfolio receive executive summaries. All of that before the plane even touches down. Meanwhile, at Stratos Airlines headquarters in Boston, the notification hit the Compliance Ops Center at 2:42 a.m. Eastern, a low-priority security flag. Except it wasn't from the FAA or TSA. It was from a financial compliance AI server embedded in the airline's core funding structure. The alert read, Unresolved high-tier client. Neglect affected individual, Monroe. Valerie tier, Diamond. Registered under Summit Equity Holdings incident, severity, escalating immediate action. Recommended. Janice Rourke, the airline's chief compliance officer, frowned. She hadn't seen a Monroe alert in almost 4 years. The last time it happened, it had cost Stratos $47 million in contract renegotiations. She picked up the phone and dialed internal legal. Wake up, Kent. Now we've got a Monroe. In another part of the building, Kent Sloan, senior counsel, internal risk, was still pulling on a wrinkled blazer when Janice's second call came in. Legal's online. PR's waking up. I need you to pull up crew manifest 1177, focus on the service logs. And Kent, this is a Monroe. He froze. Are you sure? She tapped the damn protocol herself. Silence. Then, we're in trouble. Back in the skies above the Atlantic, Valerie sat perfectly still. She didn't check her watch again. She didn't need to. She knew the system was moving now. Knew that by the time they landed in Boston, Stratos would be facing a silent war of numbers, liability, and reputation, and no one in the cabin had any idea. At Summit HQ, Noah's voice broke through the task force room. Get in touch with the International Passenger Ethics Council. They'll want in early. Push a soft flag to the Department of Transportation too, just to get ahead. Amina raised an eyebrow. You think this is going to go all the way? Noah didn't hesitate. It already has. By 3:08 a.m., Stratos Airlines internal system auto-flagged Flight 1177 for VIP incident review. The airline's crisis playbook was triggered. Internal review mode on in-flight audio retention enabled. Crew performance freeze initiated, which meant Samantha Klein and her crew were already being watched. Their voices, their body language. Every interaction since takeoff. All of it was being captured. Not for training, for liability. And then came the worst part. Kent Sloan opened the manifest and read the full line. Passenger 1A, Valerie Monroe CEO, Summit Equity Holdings Diamond Priority Tier, Funding Source Class A, Direct Contributor to Airline Infrastructure Bonds. His mouth went dry. That wasn't just a powerful executive. That was a primary funder. She wasn't flying with them. They were flying because of her. Back in the cabin, Samantha passed Valerie's seat again. No eye contact, no acknowledgement. The dessert tray didn't stop. But this time, Marcus, junior attendant, hesitated. He gave Valerie a subtle glance, then looked away quickly. He knew something was wrong. But in this system, knowing wasn't enough. What Samantha didn't know was that her dismissal of Valerie had already triggered a compliance review, a funding probe, and an ethics investigation across 3 financial oversight bodies, all from a woman she thought was just another first-class passenger who wouldn't make a fuss. At Summit, Noah stood and adjusted his tie. 10 minutes until they land in Boston, he said. Legal will intercept. Press will be silent for now. But by sunrise, he didn't finish the sentence. Everyone in the room knew how it ended. This wasn't just about a meal. This was about a signal. A signal that the quiet ones, the ones they overlooked, were not powerless. They were precise, and they were done being erased. The landing gear clunked into place as Flight 1177 began its final approach into Logan International Airport. The cabin lights dimmed and the usual scripted announcement played. "Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats. Fasten your seatbelts." But Valerie Monroe didn't hear a word of it. She was too busy watching the calm before the storm unfold, knowing full well she was the one who'd pulled the pin. From the corner of her eye, she saw Samantha Klein, the same flight attendant who had tossed her half a smile and a cold sandwich, pass by once more. Still no apology, still no acknowledgement, still assuming she'd gotten away with it. But Valerie had learned long ago, people who act untouchable are often the ones closest to being exposed. The aircraft touched down with a smooth bounce. No cheers, no claps, just the thud of wheels meeting runway, and something else too, the weight of accountability catching up. Up in the cockpit, Captain Brody glanced at the overhead panel and furrowed his brow. A rare, blinking legal hold light was active, a protocol he'd seen only once before. He tapped the intercom to speak privately with the gate manager. "Tower, this is 1177. Can you confirm why legal hold is flashing on our status screen?" There was a pause on the other end, then a clipped response. "Flight flagged by executive channel. Please hold at gate 14A. Do not release crew until further instruction." Brody's jaw tightened. Something was going down, and he had a feeling it started in seat 1A. As passengers stood to grab their bags, Samantha strode confidently through the aisle, plastic smile intact. But just as she reached the front galley, her tablet buzzed in her hand. She glanced at the screen and froze. "Crew detained. Do not leave aircraft." Her mouth went dry. What? She tried to swipe for more info, but the tablet locked itself, displaying a bold Summit Equity watermark. "Investigation in progress. Await instructions." Outside the plane, a line of dark-suited figures was already forming on the jet bridge. Not TSA, not police, but Summit's Special Compliance Division, their version of internal affairs. At the front of the line stood a man in a gray wool coat, holding a slim black tablet. His name was Matthew Cole, Director of Ethics Operations. He wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to document. The door hissed open. Matthew stepped aboard, nodded at Captain Brody, then turned sharply to Samantha. "Are you Samantha Klein?" She blinked. "Yes, You'll need to step aside. You and your entire crew are under temporary suspension pending ethics review." "You'll need to step aside. You and your entire crew are under temporary suspension pending ethics review." "What?" she gasped, eyes darting toward the cockpit. "This must be a mistake." "It's not," Matthew said coolly, flipping his screen toward her. Her name, face, flight log, all displayed under a glowing red header. Breach level, Class A. Discriminatory conduct. Passengers paused mid-step, eyes widening as they overheard. Murmurs swelled in the cabin. Valerie remained seated. She didn't speak. She didn't even blink. Matthew gave her a slight nod, barely noticeable, and kept moving. She returned it, even more subtle. The signal was clear. Phase 1 complete. By now, the plane was buzzing. A few passengers took out their phones. Someone whispered, "Is she getting fired right here?" A man in business class leaned over and muttered, "You think she did something to that woman in 1A?" The woman beside him said quietly, "I saw the meal tray. It wasn't even heated." Samantha's co-attendants, Marcus and Leah, stood to the side, confused and silent. They weren't the targets, but they weren't safe either. The whole crew had been tagged for joint review, and the worst part? They didn't even know why. Outside, another message pinged across the internal dashboards of Stratus Airlines HQ. The CEO, Frank Holloway, had just walked into his office when his chief of staff burst in. "Valerie Monroe filed formal action. she said breathlessly. The triggers escalated to level 4. Summit's pulled $60 million from the credit pool already. Frank stared at her. Already? She didn't even speak to anyone yet. She didn't have to, he muttered. Back on the plane, Valerie finally rose. Her presence was quiet, but it shifted the energy of the entire front cabin. She picked up her coat, placed her tablet in her tote, and walked forward. As she stepped past Samantha, who now stood frozen near the jump seat, she paused for just a moment. Then she leaned slightly, not looking directly at her, and said calmly, "This wasn't personal. It was just overdue." And with that, she walked off the plane. At the base of the jet bridge, a black executive car waited. Matthew Cole followed Valerie out, nodding to his assistant. "Notify FAA Ethics Board. Trigger the joint review clause." His assistant replied, "Already done. Press embargo in place for 48 hours. But once it lifts..." Matthew raised an eyebrow. "I know. They'll make a public example of this." As Valerie slid into the back seat, her phone buzzed softly. It was a message from Amina at Summit HQ. 60 pull confirmed compliance notice delivered, crew suspended indefinitely. 10 minutes flat. Want us to proceed with next tier? Valerie stared at the message, then typed just 2 words, "Not yet." Because Valerie Monroe wasn't done. Not by a long shot. This wasn't revenge. This was infrastructure-level correction. And it had only just begun. By the time Valerie Monroe arrived at Summit Equity's Boston headquarters, the city was already waking up. None the wiser that the entire airline investment sector had begun to quake. She walked through the private side entrance, bypassing security. She didn't need a badge. The building practically recognized her presence. Elevators opened without request. Lights adjusted to her step. The entire executive floor had been pre-cleared. Waiting inside conference room G7 were the key people she trusted most. Amina Farrow, her global strategy chief. Noah Drenner, director of infrastructure holdings. Delia Kim, chief legal counsel. 3 minds, 1 mission, and all of them had dropped everything the moment Valerie's silent alert had gone out. Amina was already scanning live dashboards when Valerie entered. "Good morning," she said, sliding a tablet across the polished table. "You're trending on the internal watch lists. We're up to $143 million pulled from unsecured credit channels as of 6:12 a.m. Valerie took her seat without responding. She reviewed the figures silently, expression unreadable. Noah added, "Compliance audits for Stratos, Alta Flight, and Mercury Air have been auto-triggered. That's 3 out of the 5 major portfolios we oversee." Delia looked up from her notes. "We also just got confirmation. Stratos lost a 48-hour window on their FAA renewal review because of that flight. It was flagged under the passenger dignity clause." Valerie looked up at that. That clause? She wrote it. Amina leaned in, voice lower now. "So, what's our next step?" Valerie folded her hands slowly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her silence was a prelude to precision. Then she said, "I want a full asset freeze across the Stratus ecosystem. All remaining capital reserves. No exceptions." Delia blinked. "That includes their leasing subsidiary?" "Especially them," Valerie replied. "They've been shielding non-compliance through their subsidiary network. Let's turn the lights on." Amina nodded. "Understood. And the other 3? Valerie looked toward the glass wall of the conference room, beyond which the Boston skyline slowly lit with sunrise. "We don't strike them," she said. "We invite them." The room went quiet. Amina tilted her head. "Invite?" Valerie's tone sharpened, but with focus, not force. "They've watched for too long. Stayed quiet. It's time we show them what happens when you don't lead." She turned to the screen behind her. A logo appeared. Flight Justice Index proposed ethical rating system for aviation services. A new chapter had begun. Back at Stratos HQ, chaos was slowly boiling behind closed boardroom doors. CFOs scrambled to understand the freeze notices coming through. Marketing execs fumbled to control internal leaks, and somewhere in legal, a junior compliance officer was desperately Googling who exactly Valerie Monroe was and why a passenger's cold meal complaint had turned into a $900 million financial lockdown. Back in Boston, Valerie began dictating terms. I want FJI launched in beta to 3 partners by EOD, Mercury, Helix, and AltaFlight. If they don't agree to pilot it, we review their credit risk ratings across all Summit-backed channels. Amina raised an eyebrow. That'll spook the board. Valerie. Good. Delia. And the PR angle? This is going to hit the press soon. Valerie didn't flinch. Let it. When it breaks, I want our message to be clear. This is not retaliation. This is responsibility. Noah glanced at his tablet. News just hit investor channels. Someone leaked the legal hold notice from your flight. He turned the tablet around. Valerie's name was already trending on private Telegram investor groups. Hashtags included #Valerie Monroe, #Equity Strike, Silent Pull, /Flight Ethics. One post simply read, "She didn't call the press, she called the system." Outside the glass wall, the morning sun now fully rose over Boston Harbor. Valerie stood and approached the window. She watched as a plane lifted off in the distance, tail branded with the red and white logo of Stratus Airlines. She stared at it with calm fury. "I've flown that airline since I was a grad student," she said softly. "They haven't changed." A pause. Then she turned back to her team. "But we have. And now we're going to make sure they do too." Downstairs, a quiet but high-priority alert was being sent to Summit's Credit Reassessment Division. Subject line: Internal Priority, Ethics Trigger, Monroe-Class Protocol. A separate file was generated. Flight Justice Charter Draft V0.8, with Valerie Monroe listed as Chief Architect and Sector Liaison for Aviation Ethics Reform. The game had shifted, and Valerie Monroe was now rewriting the rulebook. The email hit every major news desk on the East Coast at 7:08 a.m. Subject line: Flight crew suspended mid-plane after serving black CEO cold meal in first class. At first glance, it looked like another viral injustice headline, something social media would scream about for 48 hours before moving on. But within minutes, editors started asking the same question. Wait, who's Valerie Monroe? Then they saw the fine print. Her title wasn't CEO of a company. It was Managing Director, Summit Equity Holdings Board Chair, Flight Ethics Advisory Council Architect, the 900 Bellum Aviation Credit Web. Suddenly, it wasn't just a story. It was a boardroom bombshell. By 8:25 a.m., CNBC was live. By 9:03 a.m., 3 airline stocks had dipped. By 9:34 a.m., someone at the Department of Transportation forwarded Valerie's ethics clause to the secretary's personal inbox. And by 10:00 a.m., 4 major airline CEOs were on a private video call, each with the same question hanging in the air. What the hell just happened? Back in Boston, Valerie was ready. She stepped into Summit's strategic boardroom, the one they only used for merger decisions and international crises. Today, it was both. She glanced around the room. Half of her board had flown in. The rest joined virtually from London, Dubai, and Singapore. Her phone vibrated. A quick glance. Amina's text: 3 CEOs on standby, 2 requesting immediate sit-downs, 1's panicking. Valerie slipped the phone back into her coat pocket. No reaction. She clicked a remote, and the presentation screen behind her lit up with one slide. Flight Justice Index, version 1.0, launch window, 5 days. Her voice was calm, but carried weight. Let me be clear. This isn't just about one crew. This is about a pattern, and we're done tolerating it. She turned to the board. I'm not asking for permission. I'm informing you. Summit will no longer extend capital or infrastructure access to any airline that refuses to adopt the Flight Justice Index. One board member, A silver-haired man from Zurich cleared his throat. "Valerie, this is admirable. But practical adoption across multiple continents in 5 days?" She didn't blink. "I'm not asking all of them to adopt it. I'm asking the right ones to." Meanwhile, over at Stratus Airlines, panic had evolved into scramble. CEO Frank Holloway paced his glass office. His legal counsel had warned him this could hit their pending credit renewal. His CMO said social media sentiment had tanked 38% in 4 hours, and now his own HR Ethics Review Committee was demanding full logs from Flight 1177. But the worst part? He still hadn't heard from Valerie. No apology request, no press comment, no legal threat. Just a spreading silence that told him she didn't want justice, she wanted leverage, and she had it. At 10:45 a.m., Valerie stepped into a closed-door meeting with Helix Air, one of Summit's most stable investment partners. CEO Marla Dunn sat across from her, visibly tense. "We want to be proactive," Marla began. "But we need to understand what signing on to FJI means operationally. Will we be evaluated daily? Weekly? By whom?" Valerie responded like a surgeon. "Quarterly scoring, monthly spot audits. Scoring includes crew conduct, passenger treatment, escalation policies, and DEI compliance. No fluff, just numbers." Marla exhaled. "And if we opt in today? You'll be listed on the pilot transparency tier, publicly praised. If not, you risk being listed as pending review." Marla didn't need the second option explained. She nodded. "We're in." By noon, Valerie had closed 2 more private agreements. Mercury Air agreed to beta the full FJI protocol across 3 international routes. AltaFlight committed to full transparency on crew training. And somewhere in Los Angeles, the head of PR for Sky Nova Airlines was sweating bullets, crafting a press release in case they were next. Amina sent another update. 3 airlines signed pilot deal, 400 TNM credit pipeline redirected Stratos officially frozen from Tier 1 access. She added one more line. "You've got the whole sector on defense." Valerie read it. Then finally, for the first time all day, smiled. Not out of satisfaction, but because the real pressure was just beginning. Across the country, news anchors and commentators debated whether Valerie's actions were appropriate. Some called it excessive, others called it brilliant. A few tried to spin it as race-baiting corporate politics, but most, especially women of color, called it long overdue. And in airports across the country, whispers began to spread. "You better not pull that mess again. What if the next Valerie's watching?" That night, Valerie returned to her apartment, a penthouse with full skyline views, but no unnecessary opulence. She poured a glass of ginger tea, kicked off her heels, and sat by the window. Her assistant had left her a paper folder. Summit Protocol, old school. Inside were 3 signed contracts from that morning. She flipped through them slowly. Helix, Mercury, AltaFlight. Then she pulled out a Sharpie and wrote across the top of the folder, "This is how change begins." But before she could rest, her phone buzzed again. A notification, unconfirmed tip. Stratos preparing emergency PR campaign. Will likely blame overreaction. She sighed. They still didn't get it. This wasn't overreaction. This was the rebalancing. And if Stratos tried to spin it, she'd bury them with their own compliance reports. Valerie looked at the skyline again. One last sip of tea. Then she opened her laptop and began typing the press release herself. Not because she had to, but because this part had to be done in her voice. At exactly 7:00 a.m. EST, Stratus Airlines pulled the pin. Their emergency press release went live across all major outlets. Stratos reaffirms commitment to all passengers. A single in-flight meal discrepancy should not override years of dedication to excellence, inclusivity, and customer experience. They didn't name Valerie Monroe, but they didn't need to. The passive-aggressive tone said it all. By 7:03 a.m., their CEO, Frank Holloway, appeared on CNBC, smiling tightly as he told anchors, "We believe in due process. One cold meal doesn't define an entire company. We've reached out to Ms. Monroe directly. No response. It's important the public knows no crew member acted out of bias. The spin was slick, calculated, and, most of all, condescending. And just like that, the narrative battle had begun. But Valerie didn't flinch. She didn't issue a rebuttal. She didn't tweet. She didn't take interviews. She let Stratus scream into the void. And then, at 11 a.m., she made her move. A Summit Equity tweet appeared. Short, simple, precise. Summit Equity announces launch of Public Flight Justice Index. Full list of compliant airlines below. Attached was a pristine white web page. No ads, no distractions, just facts. Airlines compliant with FJI, Phase 1. Helix Air, Mercury Air, Altaflight. Airlines pending compliance. Skynova. Orion International Airlines not compliant. Access revoked. Stratos Airlines no drama. No emotion. Just a bullet to the system, and it hit hard. Within 42 minutes, travel forums exploded. Within 90 minutes, airline stock tickers fluttered. And within 3 hours, Stratos' shares dropped 8.2%, their worst single-day dip since 2013. Because no one wanted to fly with the airline that was now officially labeled non-compliant with passenger dignity standards. Meanwhile, Valerie was already steps ahead. In her office at Summit, she reviewed live dashboards as Amina and Delia briefed her. Sentiments in our favor, Delia said. CNBC is now referring to FJI as the Monroe Protocol. Amina added, we've had 12 other airlines request FJI info. 7 asked about onboarding timelines. 3 asked if their ethics scores could be private. Valerie looked up from the data. Tell them no. If you're ethical, you shouldn't need to hide. Amina smiled. That's what I hoped you'd say. Elsewhere, Stratus's damage control spun faster and sloppier. Their VP of Corporate Relations tried to shift focus by tweeting, let's not forget how many communities Stratos serves. Let's build, not cancel. But it backfired immediately. Someone replied with, building with what? Cold meals and cold hearts? Another wrote, she didn't cancel you. She calculated you. Hashtag Stratus. Down began trending, and no amount of corporate phrasing could stop the wave. By 4:00 p.m., Valerie's phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to Delia. If they call again, log it. We're not responding until they release a formal public apology, on paper, not pixels. Delia nodded. Should we also release your statement? Valerie turned back to her screen. No, they've already said too much. She paused, then added, let silence say the rest. Meanwhile, across America, something rare was happening. Passengers were switching flights. Helix bookings jumped 19% overnight. Mercury reported its highest app downloads since launch. Airline forums began compiling lists of Monroe-approved carriers. Mothers posted, just switched our summer travel to Mercury. Respect matters. Veterans wrote, never flying with Stratos again. She spoke for all of us who've been dismissed. And one reply on Reddit summed it up perfectly. She made one call, then she let the system answer for her. The next morning, Valerie arrived early to Summit HQ. No red carpet, no interviews, just her usual walk down the hallway. This time, with heads turning in quiet acknowledgement. Not because of her title, but because everyone now knew. She rewrote the rulebook without ever raising her voice. At 9:00 a.m., she sat down with the Ethics Advisory Council. Agenda: finalize FJI Phase 2. Scope: expand across hospitality, cruise lines, rail networks. Amina whispered, should we really go cross-industry? Valerie simply said, you saw how many ignored their own rot. We're not stopping at planes. By lunchtime, Summit's legal team had already begun outlining the framework. By evening, Valerie was back at her apartment, watching news segments dissect her impact. One anchor closed a segment with, When they pushed her to the edge of dignity, she built a new standard instead. That night, Valerie drafted a short note on Summit letterhead. To the flight crew who saw me and did nothing. This isn't vengeance. This is accountability. She sealed it and placed it in a drawer labeled Phase 3. Frank Halloway hadn't slept in 36 hours. His office at Stratus HQ was dim, save for the LED glow of 6 open screens. Stock tickers, legal briefings, PR forecasts, and one particularly brutal internal Slack thread titled FJI Fallout, Real-Time Updates. Every few minutes, a new blow landed. Helix reported its strongest quarterly booking in 5 years. Mercury was in talks to partner with Summit on exclusive international routes. AltaFlight was now the official airline of 2 Fortune 100 conferences. And then came the dagger. At 8:17 a.m., Veritas Capital, a 2.1B asset fund, announced they were re-evaluating their aviation investment strategy in light of recent ethical shifts. Translation: they were pulling out of Stratus. Frank dropped into his chair, the leather no longer giving comfort. Across the table, his GC, General Counsel, tossed a folder onto the desk. "You want the truth?" she asked, voice flat. "We're legally exposed." Frank rubbed his face. "What's our best play?" Her answer came instantly. "Apologize. Personally, directly, and sign the damn FJI agreement." He hesitated. "You mean we give her exactly what she wants?" "No," she said, leaning in. "You give the market what it now expects." At 10 o'clock a.m., Stratus called an emergency board session. 10 people, 2 continents, 1 silent dial-in from their Tokyo branch. The chairman spoke first. "We need to show leadership, not defensiveness. Valerie Monroe redefined the game. We're either in it or out." Someone objected, of course. "She's not a regulator. She's a CEO." But another board member replied dryly. So is Rosa Parks. And yet history adjusted around her. By noon, their head of communications had written 3 versions of the apology letter. Version A, soft regret. Version B, full admission. Version C, the one no one wanted to send. It started, "Dear Ms. Monroe, we failed to uphold the dignity every passenger deserves." Frank stared at the paper, jaw clenched. He pushed it aside. "I'm not signing anything until I speak with her directly." Back at Summit Equity, Valerie sat in a private conference room, eyes locked on her iPad. Amina was pacing. Delia watched the monitor. "They just requested a meeting," Amina said. "Frank himself, in person." Valerie looked unimpressed. "I'm not flying to them." "No, they're asking to come here." That paused her. She closed the iPad, leaned back in the chair. "Okay, 5 o'clock p.m. One condition." Delia raised a brow. "Which is?" Valerie replied coldly. "He walks in with the apology, signed, or he doesn't walk in at all." 5 o'clock p.m. Summit Equity HQ, executive floor. Frank Halloway arrived wearing a navy suit and the tightest smile his PR team could manufacture. In his hand, a sealed envelope. He was met not by a receptionist, but by a security officer who walked him straight to the glass-walled boardroom. Valerie was already inside, seated, alone, with a carafe of lemon water and 3 unbroken stares. No handshake, no pleasantries. Just, "Have a seat." He did. And for the first time in a long while, Frank Halloway looked small. He cleared his throat. "Ms. Monroe, first off, thank you for meeting with me." She didn't respond. "I'm here to acknowledge that Stratus failed you, both personally and professionally. That failure hurt more than your experience. It hurt our brand." Still silence. He continued, "We're ready to adopt the FJI. Fully, transparently. We hope you'll consider this a step forward." Then, as if following stage directions, he slid the sealed envelope across the table. Valerie waited 2 seconds, then 3 more. Then, finally, she opened it, read the letter. Entirely. Folded it once, placed it on the table, and said, You had the chance to apologize the day it happened. You didn't. Frank opened his mouth to reply. She cut him off. This letter isn't an apology. It's a plea for survival. And Stratos has made too many of those too late. The silence was thick. Then Valerie leaned forward. I'll still allow you to sign the FJI. You'll be placed on conditional tier, not compliant, but not blacklisted. Frank nodded quickly. Too quickly. But, she added, Summit won't restore capital access for another 18 months. His face fell. That's a death sentence. Valerie's tone never changed. So was that meal. And every other silent injustice your team served cold. The next morning, a Summit press release went live. Stratos Airlines accepts conditional compliance terms. Capital freeze remains in effect. Underneath was a single line from Valerie Monroe. Justice without consequence isn't justice. It's theater. That quote hit headlines harder than the policy itself. Financial journalists dissected the language. Social justice advocates praised it. Aviation CEOs, they just revised their training protocols overnight. And passengers across the country, they printed it on shirts. Meanwhile, at Summit, Valerie entered her office to find a single note on her desk. Amina had left it. You just did what no regulator, no lawsuit, and no press scandal ever could. Valerie smiled and whispered, Good, because we're not done yet. The invite went out at 5:45 a.m. sharp. Simple, elegant, ruthless. Press advisory. Summit Equity will host a live press conference at 11:00 a.m. Eastern. Topic: Industry-wide passenger ethics reform. Location: the Roosevelt Center, Washington, D.C. Speaker: Dr. Valerie Monroe, CEO. No leaks, no talking points, no speculation. Just one name, one city, one room that would become the epicenter of an industry quake. By 10:00 a.m., the media circus had assembled. CNN, Reuters, Bloomberg, and Telltale's News, all present, all guessing. Is this the public blacklisting of Stratos? Will she introduce federal lobbying? Are we about to see a multi-airline collapse? But behind the curtain, Valerie Monroe was calm. Her team lined up behind her like chess pieces. Amina, Communications. Delia, Legal. Ruben, Ethics Lead. And Lydia, Summit Board Rep. Each one dressed not for drama, but for court. Because today, they weren't asking for change. They were mandating it. At exactly 11:00 a.m., Valerie stepped up to the podium. No music, no slogans. Just a single graphic projected behind her. Flight Justice Index Dignity. Data. Demand. She scanned the room once, then spoke. 3 weeks ago, I boarded a flight expecting nothing more than peace, quiet, and dinner. What I received instead was a masterclass in silent bias, served cold and covered in corporate apology. But this isn't just about a cold meal, or about me. This is about a system that has normalized the dehumanization of its passengers under the guise of efficiency, of policy, of procedural error. She paused. Let's be clear. Racism does not need a slur. Sexism does not require a scream. And elitism rarely knocks. It slides a tray forward with disdain and walks away. The room went still. Even the photographers had stopped clicking. She continued. So today, Summit Equity is implementing the largest structural passenger accountability framework in modern aviation history. It is called the Flight Justice Index, and it is no longer optional. The screen behind her shifted. A second slide appeared. Mandatory compliance date, October 1st. Airlines failing to comply will lose all investment eligibility from Summit and partners. A third slide followed. This time, a chart. Airlines already compliant. Helix, Mercury, AltaFlight. Horizon Airlines in negotiation. Sky Nova, Orion Airlines non-compliant. Stratus, Pax Global, Aerowest gasps rippled through the crowd. These weren't vague references. These were receipts. A reporter from Telltales raised a hand. "Dr. Monroe, what happens to airlines that refuse to sign?" Valerie answered without flinching. "They lose access to $3.4 billion in annual credit and asset support from our financial ecosystem. They also lose the trust of a flying public who no longer travels quietly." Another reporter jumped in. "Is this blackmail?" Valerie smiled, sharp, unapologetic. "No, this is market ethics. And if your company can't pass a dignity test, it shouldn't pass go." By 11:22 a.m., the hashtags were trending. #FlightJustice, now #Monroe Protocol, #Dignity at 30K feet, #No more cold meals. But the most viral one? She did it quietly elsewhere. Airline boardrooms scrambled. At Pax Global, the CEO slammed his fist on the table. "She can't just take our funding." A young VP replied, "Sir, she already did." At Aero West, their legal team pulled an emergency retreat into a Denver hotel. A junior counsel said quietly, "She backed us into a corner." The general counsel corrected him. "No, she backed us into a mirror. And what we see now is who we've become." At Stratus HQ, Frank Halloway watched the press conference from behind a tinted glass door, surrounded by stunned silence. No one dared speak. Because Valerie hadn't said his name once. She didn't have to. She'd erased him by elevating the standard. Back in D.C., as Valerie left the stage, she stopped for one final moment in front of the crowd. If airlines wish to profit from passengers, they must protect them first. Then she walked off, not with fanfare, but with finality. Later that evening, Valerie returned to her home in Baltimore. Her mother called. "You shook the country today," she said. Valerie chuckled. "Mom, I shook the credit lines. The country will catch up." Her mother laughed. "You always were quiet until it mattered." At 9:03 p.m., a text popped up from an unknown number. "We're ready to sign. Can we schedule a review? Orion Intel." At 9:04 p.m., another followed. "Please send the FJI terms again. Full board meeting tomorrow. Sky Nova." Valerie stared at the phone, then typed just one word back to both. Tuesday. Meanwhile, across YouTube, TikTok, and cable news, Valerie's speech was everywhere. Clipped, edited, quoted, reshared. A former flight attendant posted, "She said what we were never allowed to say in uniform." A single mom of 3 commented, "For the first time, I feel like someone flying first class actually gave a damn about us in coach." A Black Navy veteran stitched her words with his own. "That cold meal wasn't just a meal. It was history, and she didn't eat it." By midnight, a Reddit thread under Arpash airline workers crossed 12,000 upvotes. One comment read, "The industry's been served, and this time, the meal came hot." That night, Valerie closed her laptop. She poured herself a glass of red wine, looked out over the harbor, and smiled. Not because the battle was won, but because now they had to play by her rules. Tell us where you're watching from, and have you ever had a moment when silence said more than words? It started with a knock, not the metaphorical kind, a literal physical knock on the glass door of Valerie's Baltimore office. It was Thursday morning, 2 days after the Flight Justice Index went viral, and Valerie had cleared her entire schedule to focus on implementation. Her team was deep in finalizing onboarding protocols for Horizon and Helix when her assistant buzzed in. "Dr. Monroe, Frank Halloway is here." Valerie didn't look up from her laptop. "Frank who?" "Halloway, Stratus Airlines." The room froze. Even Amina's fingers paused mid-keystroke. Did she just say Halloway? The Frank? The one who signed off on denying her the meal? Valerie stood up calmly, walked to the office door, and opened it herself. Frank was standing there, tie undone, eyes hollow, hands gripping a manila folder like it might explode if he let go. "Dr. Monroe," he started. She didn't invite him in. She simply tilted her head. This office is reserved for airlines in good standing, Mr. Holloway. Frank didn't flinch, but he didn't beg either. Instead, he offered the folder. I'm not here for a second chance, he said. I'm here for a reset. Valerie took the folder but didn't open it. She glanced over her shoulder at Amina. Clear the conference room. No recordings, no notes. Just the two of us. Inside the room, it was like a chessboard with no pieces. Just two chairs, one table, and 17 years of history between them. Frank spoke first. I built Stratos to be bold, fast, ruthless. He exhaled. Turns out, I trained an entire culture to mistake dignity for delay. Valerie didn't interrupt. She just watched him burn, because remorse, when real, is uncomfortable to witness. I can't undo what was done to you, he said, or to the hundreds of passengers we've overlooked. But I can stop it from happening again. He slid a sheet across the table. We're signing the FJI charter, with full compliance. Valerie looked down at the page, neatly printed. No red lines, no conditions. Just a signature line with Frank Holloway, CEO, Stratus Airlines. She tapped the paper once. Too clean, too fast. What's missing? Frank looked down. Our board voted 4-3 against it. I overrode them. If you don't countersign today, I'll be forced to resign. Silence. Then Valerie leaned forward. You didn't override your board because you believe in this charter. You did it because Wall Street just told you you're toxic. So tell me the truth, Frank. Are you signing this because you care about dignity, or because you fear being irrelevant? Frank didn't blink, but his voice cracked, just slightly. Both. I fear becoming the man who watched the world evolve and refused to evolve with it. But I also fear that I spent so long chasing altitude, I forgot to look down at who I stepped over. It wasn't a grand speech. It wasn't even eloquent. But for the first time, Valerie saw something in him she hadn't seen in years. Defeat. Not in a weak sense, but in the kind that came before transformation. She stood up, picked up the pen, signed. By noon, Stratus Airlines had officially joined the Flight Justice Index. By 3 p.m., headlines read, Former foe becomes first major convert to Monroe Protocol. Stratos capitulates, signs, ethics charter after public backlash. Holloway bows, Monroe rises higher. But back inside Valerie's office, things were anything but celebratory. Delia, the legal advisor, sat across from her. You know they'll use this to whitewash themselves. Valerie nodded. Which is why we're not giving them a PR video. No campaign, no Monroe endorsement. We give them structure, but not salvation. Amina entered moments later. We've got a problem. Pax Global and AeroWest just issued a joint statement. They're suing the FJI for antitrust violations. Delia groaned. They're really gonna play that card? Amina nodded. They claim the index creates a financial monopoly and restricts fair market operations. Valerie didn't flinch. She simply stood, walked to the whiteboard, and wrote one word in all caps. Discovery. Everyone in the room stopped, because they knew what that meant. If those airlines sued, they'd have to open their books, their internal reports, their passenger complaints, their settlement documents. They want war? Valerie said. Let's go to court with their worst day on record. Back at Summit's main HQ, the comms team worked double time, drafting press kits, prepping congressional liaisons, scheduling closed-door briefings with the FAA. Meanwhile, the Public Trust Index for airlines, measured in real time by Summit's AI system, showed something unseen in years. Passenger optimism was climbing. In Atlanta, a retired schoolteacher posted, "For the first time in 22 years, I booked a flight and didn't feel nervous at the gate." In Chicago, a teenage wheelchair user wrote, "The agent actually asked me if I needed support, not assumed I didn't." That's new. In Los Angeles, A former flight attendant now working in HR said, "They're finally listening to the crew, not just the captains." But inside Valerie, something else stirred. Not pride, not revenge. Wait, because every system she fixed revealed another that was broken. That night, she received a call from Senator Whitfield, a longtime ally. "Valerie, what you're doing, it's not just aviation anymore. Other sectors are watching. Banks, hospitals, even public transit boards. They want your blueprint." Valerie's voice was soft. "This started with a tray of food. Now I'm being asked to serve an entire infrastructure." The senator smiled. "And you're the only one who knows how to do it without shouting." Before the call ended, she received one more email. Subject line: International Ethics Forum. Invitation to keynote. Geneva, Switzerland. She stared at the screen, then clicked accept. Because sometimes the best revenge is building the table where others once refused to offer you a seat. The Rayburn House office building didn't look like a battlefield, but that morning it was. Inside room 2370, the congressional hearing on the Flight Justice Index was about to begin. And Valerie Monroe wasn't just a witness. She was the target. "Please rise." The clerk's voice was firm, formal. Valerie stood tall in her charcoal pantsuit, unbranded, understated, and immaculately pressed. She took her oath. Her gaze never dropped. Behind her, the gallery was packed. Reporters, union reps, airline execs, and dozens of survivors who had submitted testimonials to the index. And at the far right end of the panel sat Congressman Walter Raines, old guard, airline funded, smiling like he'd already won. "Dr. Monroe," he began, voice syrupy, "we appreciate your initiative, but many of us are concerned that the FJI behaves more like a blacklist than a reform tool." Valerie didn't flinch. "With respect, Congressman," she said evenly, "when the data shows 84% of the complaints come from repeat offenders, what would you suggest we call them? Trusted?" Murmurs rippled. A few aides scribbled faster, but Raines leaned back, smug. "You're punishing entire crews based on passenger feelings." Valerie took a breath. "No, sir. We're measuring verifiable behavior patterns from cross-referenced reports. Across time, across airlines. Patterns don't lie. They reveal culture." That silenced him for a second. Then came Congresswoman Patricia Fenley, a moderate who hadn't yet revealed where she stood. "Dr. Monroe, this index, who exactly governs it? Who ensures it doesn't become your personal weapon?" Valerie nodded slowly. "Fair question." She turned toward the screen behind her and tapped the table console. A real-time dashboard appeared. The FJI is governed by a 7-member ethics council, composed of independent representatives from civil rights groups, aviation labor unions, disability advocates, and regulatory experts. No one person, not even me, can alter a crew's score. Our decisions require blind review, triple vote, data evidence. Silence again. But the power in the room had shifted. A few of the younger congresspeople leaned in now. A staffer mouthed, "We didn't know that." And then, from the gallery, came a sharp rustle. An older black woman in a wheelchair raised her hand. It was Mrs. Eunice Warren, 74, a retired librarian who had once been left in a jet bridge for 90 minutes by Stratus staff. She was holding a framed photo of her late husband in uniform. A security guard moved to stop her, until Valerie lifted her hand and said calmly, "She should be heard." The room stilled. Eunice's voice wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. "The day y'all forgot me on that bridge was the day I realized my life didn't matter to people in uniforms anymore. But this woman right here," she pointed at Valerie, "she gave me back my voice. Not through hashtags, through accountability." Applause erupted. The committee chair banged the gavel, trying to restore order, but the emotional tide had turned. Back at the panel, Raines looked visibly annoyed. He flipped to another tab on his tablet. Dr. Monroe, let's talk funding. Are you or your firm profiting from any airlines participation? Valerie smiled. Finally. Because this was the question she'd prepared for most. Summit Equity has divested from all direct airline holdings. The index itself is run as a non-profit public utility under federal license, audited quarterly, and backed by multi-sector oversight. She paused. We don't profit from behavior. We reform it. The chair leaned forward now, curious. You said multi-sector. Are you saying other industries are interested in adopting your framework? Valerie nodded. Yes. As of last week, 2 national hospital systems and 1 railway operator have requested adaptation models. Because they recognize something most of us don't want to admit. She glanced down the panel. The problem isn't just the airlines. It's what happens when institutions stop seeing humans and start seeing transactions. The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy, lingering. Then, almost theatrically, Senator Claire Whitfield, seated in the elevated row behind the committee, cleared her throat. Dr. Monroe, one final question. Valerie met her eyes. Let's say this committee votes to restrict the FJI's authority. Let's say they shut it down. What happens next? Valerie didn't hesitate. Then you'll have proven the passengers were right to fear silence more than turbulence. There was no applause, but there didn't need to be. The weight of that line sank in like gravity. After the hearing, Valerie stepped into the corridor where reporters waited. She gave no speech, no victory dance, just a short statement. This work isn't about headlines or hearings. It's about not having to ask for basic decency at 36,000 feet. And we won't stop until that's the norm, not the exception. That night, footage from the hearing topped trending news. Hashtags like #NotJustAseat, #FlightJustice, and #She Stood Alone flooded social media. But in Valerie's home in Baltimore, she sat quietly on her patio, watching planes pass overhead in the dark. Each one, a tiny dot of light moving through cold sky. And she whispered, not for anyone to hear, but for herself. Next stop, the trains. 6 months later, a cold wind swept through New York's JFK airport. But inside Terminal 6, something had changed. It wasn't the temperature, it was the silence. No yelling at passengers, no dismissive looks, no angry tones toward mothers with strollers, elderly in wheelchairs, or young teens flying solo. Instead, you heard, "Good afternoon, ma'am. May I help you with your bag?" "Mr. Grant, thank you for your service. We've prioritized your boarding." "Yes, young lady, your seat is confirmed. Welcome to first class." No one told them to say those things, but they knew someone was watching now. Valerie Monroe never wanted fame. She never needed applause. But change? That, she demanded, and it was happening. The Flight Justice Index had rolled out nationally. Every airline that received federal credit lines was now required to adopt it, or risk being blacklisted from major investment portfolios. A color-coded rating, visible to internal HR and industry oversight, now tracked every crew member's behavioral history, just like maintenance records for aircraft. 3 yellow flags, retraining. 1 red, immediate evaluation. 2 reds within a year, grounded, indefinitely. Major networks ran segments titled, "Why Your Flight Just Got Kinder, The Monroe Doctrine in the Skies." CNN called it, "The most quietly revolutionary reform in aviation since 9/11. But Valerie didn't care for headlines. She was in Phoenix, seated alone in the back of a community college auditorium. No press, no announcement. Just a soft moment with students in uniform, part of Summit Equity's new scholarship for future pilots and aviation engineers from underrepresented backgrounds. A young girl named Jasmine raised her hand. "Ms. Monroe, is it true you were kicked off a flight just for asking for food?" Valerie smiled gently. "I wasn't kicked off. I just wasn't seen. And sometimes, being invisible hurts more than being pushed." The room was silent. until a young Latino boy in ROTC uniform raised his voice. "Well, they see you now, ma'am." Valerie's throat tightened. She nodded slowly. "Thank you." Back in Washington, Congressman Raines had quietly stepped down amid leaked memos revealing years of suppressed complaints tied to campaign donors. The Stratos CEO, who had dismissed the initial incident as a passenger misunderstanding, was replaced. Publicly, the new CEO, a black woman from Detroit, a former flight attendant herself. Her first order of business: respect isn't policy, it's culture, and it starts now. Valerie's legacy grew, but she stayed behind the curtain. She declined interviews. She turned down book deals, and when Time magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people of the year, she didn't attend the gala. She sent a video instead. "This isn't about me. It's about your mother not having to cry in silence on a plane. Your father not being asked if he belongs in first class. Your child not being told to sit back down, kid. Justice isn't loud, it's consistent." 1 year later, Flight 1189 from Newark to San Diego experienced a minor turbulence scare. A teenage boy, traveling alone for the first time, gripped his seat. The attendant, an older man with streaks of gray at his temple, sat beside him. "Hey, son, you okay?" The boy nodded but didn't speak. Then the attendant noticed his necklace. A small silver charm. "FJI, passenger dignity, always." The attendant smiled. "You know what that means, right?" The boy hesitated, then said, "It means you treat people right, even if no one's looking." The plane landed safely. No one knew Valerie Monroe's team had reviewed the internal report on that flight. No flags were raised, because dignity had flown at 36,000 feet, quietly, confidently. Epilogue. The flight never really ends. 3 years later, Valerie finally published something. Not a memoir, not a TED Talk. Just a simple, downloadable white paper titled "Systems with Soul: Designing Accountability with Compassion." It was shared across industries: healthcare, education, public transit. People began adapting the Monroe model. Her framework was now being considered in 17 countries and 6 transportation sectors. She had never planned a legacy, but the world built one around her anyway. Back at JFK, a young attendant training session closed with one final slide. "Remember, you're not just part of an airline, you're part of someone's story." Valerie Monroe, CEO, Emeritus, Summit Equity. What about you? Have you ever witnessed someone being quietly powerful? Someone who didn't shout but still changed everything? Tell us where you're watching from and what moment stuck with you most. We read every story.